Ignition. Liftoff. Liftoff. 30 minutes after the hour.
Hello and welcome to AWS Made Easy, episode number 108. This is the show where we talk about the latest AWS announcements, especially related to cost optimization, to generative AI. I'm Stephen Barr.
Hi everyone, I'm Rahul Subramaniam, and what a week it was last week. We had FinOpsX, tons of announcements coming in from all the different cloud providers, particularly AWS, and there was so much more we had to discuss and share. We did an episode, I think, on Tuesday, did we? Yeah, that was Tuesday
Yes.
morning, where we did the show right before FinOpsX was getting started. And now we have so much more to talk about what happened over there. We actually have an entire dedicated episode for that. But we'll get to that. What do we have in store for today, Stephen?
Well, let's start with the biggest announcement in the generative AI space, which is Anthropic Claude 3.5 Sonnet. Let's put this on the screen.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this one. 3.5 Sonnet has been really amazing. In fact, it's been giving GPT-4o quite a run for its money. And the fact that Claude 3.5 Sonnet was literally available at the same time as the announcement was made by Anthropic was amazing. It was available in Bedrock immediately. And, you could get started with it right away. I think I remember literally just requesting access. It took about 30 seconds for the access to be granted. And
Yeah,
I was
whatever
I
happens
was up and
behind the
running.
scenes, right? It happens quickly.
Correct. And now that I think about it, I mean, pretty much all the models you get, access to those models within about 30 seconds. I really wonder why they created that extra layer of friction where you have to request access for a particular model
I do.
and approve it.
Yeah, maybe there's some manual process for some of them, or they're allowing themselves some room for a manual process.
Hmm.
It is strange. Maybe
Yeah.
they're reserving the right to have some layer where they can examine your use case and maybe be a bit more discerning, even though
Yeah.
right
In a
now it's
bunch of these
basically
cases, you
dial-up
don't even
embedded.
have to specify your use case. You literally just go make a request and then you wait for 30 seconds to a few minutes and then you get access. So just a lesson in, reducing friction. It would be amazing to not have to do that every time a new model is announced. But nevertheless, an amazing feature. I love Cloud 3.5 Sonnet. It's been amazing for both vision AI use cases and also, general language capabilities.
Well, I'm going to share the tab of Anthropic's announcement. Now, one thing that's interesting here is this comparison graph of intelligence to cost.
Yeah,
Now, Bedrock's Amazon, if you use it via Bedrock, the cost is basically the same
right.
in terms of proportions. So, proportion of use, Sonnet, Opus, Haiku. So, Opus is now Claude 3 Opus is useless at this point, right?
Correct.
If 3.5 Sonnet is more intelligent for less cost.
Correct. Yeah, it's going to, I'd be very excited about Haiku 3.5 as well as Opus 3.5. But Opus 3.5 is going to have to really, really do better than Sonnet by a very large margin. And I think that's starting to get a lot harder for a lot of these models, but we'll see how it evolves. Haiku has tons of scope. Haiku does really well for a bunch of these, simple use cases. It is really cost effective, and I can't wait to see what happens with Haiku 3.5 as they improve on the intelligence access, but maintain very similar costs.
Now, has there been an official announcement or is it mostly unofficial? I mean, we all know 3.5 Opus and Haiku are on their way.
Yes,
Sonnet is kind of the tip of the spear, but there
I
are
yeah,
more coming.
I think they did announce that 3.5 and so 3.5's Haiku and Opus are things that they're working on right
This is interesting. Looking at this, Claude 3.5 Sonnet solved 64% of problems,
now. Right.
outperforming Claude 3 Opus, which solved 38. And
Yep.
that's in their internal agent-based coding evaluations.
Exactly.
Let's keep looking. Okay, zero shot, COT, undergraduate level knowledge. Wow, this is very impressive by the numbers. I said beating GPT-4 in basically every category here.
Yep. I have yet to try this out on code generation examples. So for example, GPT 4.0 on code generation for me actually produced really bad results. So even though this says 90%, it it really was a struggle to get it to generate syntactically correct code every time. And so I can't. I'm yet to. Today's my day when I'm going to be experimenting with a bunch of code generation using uh, 3.5 Sonnet. But for
Mm,
vision and for general language skills, 3.5 Sonnet has been absolutely amazing.
this is pretty neat. Transcribing text from imperfect images,
Yep.
and that's, like I said, for retail, logistics, financial services. That is that is it's interesting. I can imagine for these, and even though I don't like them, the self checkouts at the grocery stores, more and more AI power of that, and
Yeah.
fight the rampant fraud that gets encouraged by these things. When
Agreed.
you
There's a
can
really there's
have,
one other aspect of this which is quite interesting. You should check out artifacts for 3.5 Sonnet, and yeah, that's the one. This I found to be really interesting. So you should check it out if you haven't already. Where it basically changes the way you interact with the LLM, right?
so
You can
effectively you are sending, if you are working on something iteratively, like a block of code or a piece of
correct.
art, it keeps it in the context window without sending the entire conversation plus step
Yes,
I, right?
correct. Correct. So all your intermediate artifacts are right there in the context without having to send it back and forth. And I think for an interactive communication, that is pretty amazing. I think it's going to change the way we think about these interactive conversations or chats and stuff like that with an LLM.
Yeah, and it'll be curious to see how we can use artifacts with Bedrock,
Yeah,
because they will have to expand their API, and that will be a challenge for them going forward as the different models have different features to be able to
correct.
have an API that is general but also can actually fully use every single model, right? Because if you want to use 3.5 Sonnet, you want to use all of the features, including
Right.
artifacts. Is this a
Yeah.
feature of their UI and
This
how
is a
they're
feature of their
packaging it, or is it a
UI.
feature of the model?
No, no, no. This is definitely a feature of their UI and the way they actually enable the interaction. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see, like you said, what Bedrock does with it and how it enables it. Uh, Talking about UI enhancements, just this morning, Claude AI announced their version of knowledge bases and the concept of a project, which was also very exciting. And it's interesting to see the contrast in the implementations between what Bedrock has done and what Cloud AI has done. And in this particular case, I think what Anthropic has done has been pretty impressive.
I've we are team Amazon. Go T. We want Amazon's things to work, but it's also hard to use. And we can see the play that they're making. They want to make sure set for the enterprise. I
Right.
was working on a knowledge base yesterday for all of the AWS Made Easy things. It's still a bit tricky to coordinate. You getting up your vector store, making sure the vector store. I'm using the Titan V2 embedding, so I had to make sure the vector column was 1024 instead of 1536 or whatever it was for Titan V1. Right?
Right.
You have to do a bit of work to set it all up, and it would be nice if there's a an express path.
Yeah.
This what they're showing here with Anthropic looks really easy. Uh, Look at that.
Yeah. It's really simple. You just upload a bunch of documents. Um, this is kind of what we've been calling the second brains, right? This is where you take a lot of your knowledge, your insights, and stuff like that, put that out in the knowledge base, and then you can also have custom prompts that define how the responses are going to be set up. And then, in a certain way, this is almost like a custom assistant with specific knowledge bases that back it.
Well,
I love this implementation of it. It's really simple.
yeah, it'll be. I think we should do a comparison of that. I will have the AWS Made Easy knowledge base in Bedrock all set up with
Great,
all of our episodes, and not just that, but all of our social media posts, everything there. So you could say, so we can figure out what we've done, right? Figure
great.
out all the different things. And I'd love to compare this with the Anthropic one. So let's compare it, see how it is from an ease of use standpoint, from a flexibility standpoint, see if we can generate an episode based on some AWS announcements. We
Yeah,
should generate an episode that's
that'd be absolutely amazing.
synthetic. That would be cool. I was just double checking the Anthropic announcement here. Okay, so they said to complete the 3.5 model family, we'll be releasing 3.5 Haiku and 3.5 Opus later
Later
this
in this
year.
year. Yeah.
So I guess we could say goodbye to 3 Opus at this point. 3 Opus, you should
Yeah.
not use it under any circumstance. You'd better use 3.5 Sonnet. It is
Correct.
smarter and cheaper.
Absolutely. If you're using three Opus, you're basically wasting money.
Well, it was a good run. We enjoyed it while it lasted. All right.
Awesome.
Let's move on to the next announcement, which is, let's share this tab. Amazon Aurora now provides additional monitoring information during upgrades. Okay, so Rahul, what do you think of this one? What are the impact of this monitoring information during upgrades for enhanced observability?
Yeah, so this is actually pretty neat. Usually, when we're upgrading our databases, there is some level of downtime, and you're constantly trying to figure out what's happening behind the scenes as the new instance comes up with the upgrades. This additional insight actually, helps. Sometimes these upgrades could take anywhere from 1 minute to up to 10 minutes, depending on what kind of a database you've set up and how large your cluster is, and so on. Having these insights is incredibly useful to making sure that you are making all the right decisions. Sometimes you might just have to roll back if things fail in the middle, and you don't want to wait all the way till all the stack sets are completely executed. That said, there's one tip that I share with everyone that could make your life a lot easier, which is use RDS proxy in front of every database so that your applications have the ability to continue to work while these upgrades are going on. So, for example, if you have an Aurora cluster with multiple instances, maybe you upgrade, you first start upgrading one read node at a time. And then as you come to your write node, you can make one of the read nodes your master node. And you can do all of this within the RDS proxy in a pretty simple way. And that way your applications don't really need to know very much. The endpoint for the applications continue to remain the same. It just acts as a layer of abstraction, which is incredibly useful.
It's really funny, this whole idea of monitoring during the upgrade. I know this is a stretch of an analogy, but whenever I see jailbreak movies, right, they always do it when during the changing of the guard.
No prison in the world is airtight. Each one has a key. You just have to find it.
How do you do that?
A lot of looking, especially at things that break up the daily routine. Guards get comfortable doing the same thing day in, day out.
Right. During some transitional period. And that's where you really want to make sure your monitoring is set up, because that's where things can slip through the cracks. That's where you can make a mistake, right? That's
Exactly.
where you really want to have that extra monitoring is during those transitional periods, like an upgrade. So
Correct.
Having additional monitoring during upgrade is useful. Let's rate this one and tag it. What do you think about this one?
I'm not entirely sure it simplifies. I actually think that it's an additional insight. It reduces your anxiety a little bit when these upgrades are going on. I don't know if it qualifies specifically as simplifies.
So are we going to give this a neutral?
I would give this a neutral. And
Okay.
we'll just have to see how people, end up using this. And then when it comes to a rating, I would definitely give this for Cloud. For the description and all the technical documentation is actually really good. So
Yeah, and they have a getting started link. I mean, this is their
Exactly.
landing page. Oh, here we go. Yeah, getting started with Amazon Aurora. So, yeah, great. All right. Well, 4 and a neutral for Amazon Aurora, providing additional monitoring during upgrades. All right, let's go to our next article. Let's share this tab. This is Amazon Elasticache, supports M7G and R7Gs. That's Graviton 3 for the memory and compute-based instances in additional regions. So
Yeah.
taking the big picture view, managed services, given that we could change either Intel or Graviton, why would we want to use Graviton?
Yeah. I mean, the Graviton processors are cheaper and faster in most cases. And if these are managed services anyway, AWS has taken a lot of pain and trouble to make sure that the migration to the Graviton instances is as seamless as possible. So it just makes sense to have the Graviton instances by default for all of these. And if you're not using Graviton, then you're just wasting a ton of money.
Yeah, completely agree. Amazon has made the contract for you, right? It is a managed service, especially for something as simple as Elasticache, right? Where it's literally holding on to a piece of information. The whole point is to deliver it with low latency. It seems like
Correct.
a Graviton 3 is perfectly situated to do that. And why not use something that is cheaper and
Faster in most cases.
faster? Yeah.
Yeah, it is faster in most cases. So it just makes complete sense. That should be the default. If you're starting a new instance, you can naturally create an organizational policy to not allow new instances to be Intel or AMD instances, and instead just default everything to Graviton.
And what other managed services should people look out for besides Elasticache? What other?
So I'd say all the
Graviton
Aurora databases, you've got Elastic, you've got OpenSearch. You should look at Graviton for pretty much all of your databases. In fact, everything that shows up under the databases section of the AWS console are simple things, and there you've got all the flavors of, timescale. Sorry, it's called TimeStream, Neptune, all your relational databases, all your graph, like all of those which are managed services should definitely, all your caches, those should all default to Graviton. I see no sense in having them being Intel or AMD.
And then once you've looked at that, another place to look is Lambda functions. Lambda functions are often calling a little bit of Python code.
Right.
Very rarely have I ever found a architecture-specific bit of Python in a Lambda function. So you can go over your CloudFormation templates, change that architecture. It's one line, and you can have a Graviton-based Lambda as well.
I completely agree. I think for most cases, Lambda functions can actually just work really well on Graviton. I think one of the interesting insights I had with a bunch of developers was that if you're developing on a Mac, making sure that everything continues to work on a Lambda function remotely on a Graviton instance is relatively straightforward. But sorry, when folks are creating their layers and stuff like that in Lambda, when they're operating on Windows machines based on Intel stuff, there's just a tiny bit more friction to make sure that everything is going to run when you switch over to Graviton. And I think that's the hesitation that a lot of folks have as they're developing on Windows-based machines that are running on either Intel or AMD.
So you could do a multi-architecture setup and then have it all caught in a
Yes.
CI/CD test suite. That's one way to do it. So you develop in, say, if you were developing in Python, and you could have some Docker file,
right,
and some CI/CD, which rolled it up into a container that was architecture specific. And you could even have both, right? You could have one runner for each architecture and test them on both if you really wanted to.
Exactly. I mean, it's easy to get over that constraint.
Mm-hmm.
And you could absolutely build a very simple, straightforward GitHub Actions or CI/CD setup that compiles and makes sure that all the dependencies, all the libraries are architecture specific for where you want to deploy them. It's really simple, relatively simple to get done. The only thing is that it's one more step.
Yeah.
It's a tiny bit more friction. So I would recommend don't let that not have you switch over to Graviton. You should try out Lambda with Graviton. It's really simple and way cheaper.
And then quick plug for CloudFix. CloudFix, we have several Finder fixers which look for these Graviton-based savings opportunities where you can find managed services or that are not on Graviton and do one click to migrate them over. And that's just one of the many tens of Finder fixers that can run all the time, keep your account continuously optimized to make sure that if you launch new managed services, right, it might just be a habit. You forget to tick off that Graviton box. You forget to make that change. You're copy pasting an old CloudFormation template, and all of a sudden you've got new Intel instances again. Well, what an easy way to automatically find them using automation. They will be caught, and then it'll come up. Do you want to execute this finder fixer? That will switch this over to Graviton, you hit execute, and you are off to the races.
Correct. And don't forget, CloudFix is free now for the first 3 months as you onboard your accounts. And so we want to see how much you can really save. There should be zero barriers from the standpoint of cost of getting all of these fixes. It's really, really simple. These are all really simple AWS recommended fixes and best practices that you should be implementing anyway. So that there should be nothing stopping you from just, signing up, onboard your accounts, and start saving right now. It's absolutely free.
I want to see how much people can save in a 3-month period. What percentage of the finder fixers? I want to know who executes the most most amount of the finder fixers, and to see what their mindset was. We will see what the results of this experiment are. I'm really looking forward to knowing.
Yeah, I'd be excited to share that with everybody. So can't wait to see what you guys do and how much you actually manage to save.
Okay.
Super excited about that. What's next, Steven?
Well, we have several FinOps related headlines. Now, as you said, just yesterday we spoke to Rick Oakes of AWS. We are editing that interview as we speak. It is on the virtual cutting room floor. We hope to get that to you as soon as possible. Of course, we want to make sure we have it packaged up in as nice as we can, make sure everyone signs off, and we will have that out shortly. We wanted to talk about some of the latest announcements that we will be covering with Rick, just as a sneak preview. I'll put the first one up on the screen.
Great.
Was the general availability of Focus 1.0. Now, this was announced during the day one keynote of FinOpsX. Now, you were there, Rahul. How was the reaction to this Focus 1.0, both the general availability and just in general? Are people excited about Focus? Are they nervous? What's the vibe about Focus?
So I think most folks are very excited about Focus 1.0, particularly the folks who are on a multi-cloud setup or even a hybrid setup. The fact that on day 2, during the keynote, every one of the top 4 cloud providers, I'm talking about AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, as well as Oracle, all 4 of them announced support for Focus 1.0 as part of the data exports. There was a huge sigh of relief from all the practitioners of FinOps, because it solves a very, very important problem, which is when you're dealing with data coming in from different providers, how do you marry them all up? The fact that you call a resource something in one cloud could be called something completely different in another cloud, or the way you actually think of certain concepts of billing or showback or chargeback might be represented in completely different ways. And then invariably you write tons of crazy ETLs to kind of transform all the data and kind of normalize it all. And it's very, very error prone. In fact, one of the customers, very interestingly, was sharing some pieces of data saying when they deal with all these different cloud providers, every month in their billing, they get an error of about 6.5%. That's huge. There could be millions of dollars that is just error in trying to translate and making sure that everything is lined up correctly.
And this data, being able to compare apples to apples, there's so many little things that go into this. And as a simple analogy, right? In the US, when we think about car efficiency, we think about miles per gallon.
Right.
Whereas when I was in Australia, they said liters per 100 Ks.
Right.
And so it's two different numbers, and it's not just metric versus customary, but the numerator and denominator are switched.
Yeah.
Right. So here we want miles per gallon to be as high as possible. There you want liters per 100 Ks to be as small as possible. And so you try to compare them all and wait, which one's better? Right? Because they're in different units in different ways, different standards. And that's just one metric. Right. Now here we're talking about an entire cloud with resources and regions and availability zones and different metering patterns and different discount rates, right? All of these things have to be able to be represented in one standard, but without making it so complicated that we don't have Amazon flavored Focus and Microsoft flavored Focus, and then they're not compatible anyway.
Exactly. And so this has been quite an achievement. I think kudos to the FinOps team and all the members of the FinOps board that have, you know, the work, or sorry, the focus steering committee that have worked tirelessly to make sure that this stuff is, gets out of the door, building consensus across three heavyweights or four heavyweights of cloud providers isn't easy. And what they've accomplished with this is actually quite remarkable. And also kudos to all the cloud providers who agreed, and there was consensus in how this should be done, and they actually released it in a relatively short amount of time. I've seen RFCs in the early days where they would take years to be put out as standards. um, I think there are still a bunch of, if I'm not mistaken, there are a few very commonly used technologies that are still in the RFC stage, where there isn't consensus, but it's just become the norm today. But technically, they are still RFCs, and they haven't, officially gotten consent of all the stakeholders or parties.
Well, and I think the worry was, well, almost like what happened with electric car chargers, right? Where there could be a
Right.
standard that's developed by the industry, but then one heavyweight player just says, no, we're going to do it our way. And the momentum just shifts,
Yeah.
right? So then you want to make sure, no, all of the heavyweights are kind of equally bought in. So that is an enormous amount of coordination to actually get that right. That's pretty
Correct.
cool.
So the amazing thing about the add-on to this is AWS has gone ahead and updated their data exports portal to now include Focus 1.0 as part of one of the exports that you can do, and that's pretty neat. It's really really simple. You can just go into the portal, select the type of export and choose the S3 bucket and get your export in no time. So we're going to be diving into more details about this as we put out the episode with Rick, and get into the nitty gritty details of why this is so amazing and how easy it is. But we will leave you with this headline so you can go check it out, and do tune in for more details on this.
Yeah, we have a great conversation with Rick coming up. Here it is, Data Experts for Focus 1.0 in billing and cost management.
Perfect.
Now, next one?
Yeah, let's pick the next one. The next
That is-
announcement, and we're just going to skim through these very, very quickly because we have amazing deep dives into these coming up either later this week or early next week. So let's quickly just walk through these, but we'll dive into the details in another episode. So the next one is right sizing recommendations are now available in Compute Optimizer. This is really, really cool. This is really hard, and the team has worked for years trying to make sure that this is as safe and trustworthy as possible. Um, in our episode with Rick, we discuss all the details of how they actually ensured that this was safe. Rick describes what safety actually means in terms of making sure that the recommendations don't ever break anything and how they accomplish this. So we are going to cover the details of this, but I love the fact that now you have right sizing recommendations available for all the RDS instances, Postgres and MySQL.
And it was really impactful just talking about the very intimate knowledge of database engines that's required to make good recommendations.
Correct.
Right? And sometimes you want to have more memory and then things will run faster and then take less time, so you need less resources.
Correct.
It's really, really exciting. So we will have that episode as soon as we can. We're
Correct.
diving into Premiere Pro and getting all of my footage off of the SSDs. We have a lot of many gigabytes of footage to edit. It's a great interview.
Awesome.
Okay. And then the last one that we also covered with Rick, but again, we wanted to just bring this to your attention, was the cost optimization reports with data exports for Cost Optimization Hub.
Correct. So this is again one of the other export feeds that's available. Now, if you haven't checked out Cost Optimization Hub, please do. Cost Optimization Hub is really amazing in that it can consolidate all of your billing and all of your optimization insights from all the different systems, subsystems that are available, whether it's Compute Optimizer, whether it is your Kudos dashboards, or whether it is a trusted advisor. It brings everything into one single place. And now that's available as an export that you can take into any other third-party tool or whatever system you're using to get those insights or report those insights in a dashboard. So really simple to get started with. Again, simple. Choose your type of export, choose an S3 bucket, and hit export. Really simple. We are going to dive into some details on this as well, but really excited for releasing that conversation with Rick.
Yeah, that is our show for the day. We have a very relatively fast episode. We are busy making these long form interviews we'll be releasing over the next couple of weeks that we are really excited to bring you.
Yep.
Well, it has been a lot of announcements just in the last couple of hours.
Correct.
What are you looking forward to for the rest of the week?
Oh, like I said, my number one experimentation is around 3.5 Sonnet for code generation in particular. 3.5 Sonnet supports an insane variety of languages and stuff like that. I just want to see how good it is in making sure that the code produced is syntactically correct. So I'll share those results and those experiments shortly. And then the knowledge bases with Claude AI, that's something that I'm excited to try out. At the same time, trying to, I really want to build my frame of reference around the difference between the knowledge bases that are available on Bedrock and Claude AI. So
well, I
there's
think
going to
that is a
be
good deep dive for a
Yeah.
future episode. I'm going to be using Bedrock knowledge bases today to bring in all of our old transcripts. I had moved I've got a Bedrock knowledge base powered by RDS with PG Vector. Well, it's Aurora with PG Vector. So looking forward to comparing that to Anthropic. It was a bit of work to set up the Bedrock knowledge base.
Yeah, it is. Bedrock knowledge bases is not easy to get set up and get right. But yeah, it is there. Again, hopefully it will get simpler. And a lot of services over a period of time at AWS do get simpler as they learn more, as they understand the interactions more. It's just a matter of time.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching. We hope you have a great week and keep an eye out for the Rick Oakes episode. We'll release that as soon as it's ready. All right. Thanks everyone.